News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good morning to you. This is Newsline. We are broadcasting from the News First studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this edition is a recording this morning. And we've got here with us veteran diplomat, former Foreign Secretary, former Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Dr. Palitha Kohona. Very good morning to you, Doctor, and welcome on the show.
Good morning, Faraz. Happy to be here again.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, it's been a long time since you've been here. We thought we'd ask you on a couple of matters. The most pressing appears to be this UN Resolution 30/1, because I believe come March we're going to have more questions surrounding that. And the new president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, has said that he needs to revisit that whole arrangement. How likely is that to happen?
Whether it's likely or not, we need to adopt a more proactive approach to this resolution compared to what we have done in the last 4 or 5 years. The resolution is not inconsistent with Sri Lanka's national interest. Therefore, and we also said this over and over again during the election campaign, that we will do our best to visit the resolution, revisit it, and take us in a different direction. The resolution itself causes problems. As we know, Human Rights Council resolutions are not binding. They cannot be enforced by the Council, nor can they be enforced by the High Commissioner for Human Rights. But here's the catch. We co-sponsored this resolution. So even if there were no legally binding commitments on our part, there is certainly a moral commitment on us. And in fact, the international community, especially the ones who promoted this resolution, will expect Sri Lanka to comply with the commitments that it voluntarily agreed to. Now, this is where the problem is. And as I said earlier, the resolution itself is not very much in our own interest. And we certainly need to do something serious about it.
And what are the contentious parts of 30/1?
We've discussed this extensively in the media, in television interviews, and in Parliament. Just to illustrate some of the issues, we agreed to bring in international council, international judges, etc., to investigate into various allegations of breaches of global human rights standards and global and war crimes. Now, this is, in my view, a huge problem, because we agreed to this voluntarily despite problems that may arise with our own constitution. And as to why we did it, I still have not received a clear answer. And then again, in addition to that, we also agreed, at the behest of those who promoted the resolution, to return land that had been acquired by the military for strategic purposes. And even the countries that were behind this resolution have military establishments, not all over their own countries, but around the world. And as to why Sri Lanka should listen to external entities as to where we should locate our military establishments is a question to which I have not received an answer. And then, of course, there are other issues like that in this resolution. They have asked us in the resolution to consider the reconsider the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and in fact repeal it. Now, if you go to any one of these countries which are behind this resolution, you find the most draconian laws to deal with terrorism. I have no problem with that. I have no qualms with that. Terrorism is a scourge and it has to be dealt with firmly. But as to why Sri Lanka should be asked to repeal its Prevention of Terrorism Act, which is nowhere near draconian as some of the laws that apply in different other countries. Again, I have an issue there.
And one of the things about, that you just mentioned about bringing in foreign judges and I think also investigators, does that sort of inter alia say that Sri Lanka's judiciary is not capable of handling these matters?
Now, I am an attorney myself, attorney at law, and this provision to which we have agreed to is an insult to our judiciary, to our investigating authorities. Of course, there may be bad apples here and there, like in any country, but to impugn the entire judiciary, the entire law enforcement structure, I think is absolutely unforgivable. We have highly respected judges. Not only do our judges work in this country, they work in other countries, in Fiji, for example, and they're highly respected there. And against that background, to agree to a provision which says that our judges are not good enough, our investigators are not good enough, and judges and investigators, counsel, had to be brought in from outside, is unforgivable in my view.
Is it that they want to bring them in to establish the integrity of that process?
I don't think it establishes the integrity of the process. It simply diminishes the value of our own judicial structure.
What are they trying to say by insisting on that? Are they trying to say that they have no faith in our system?
Well, we could say the same about them.
Right.
Do we have faith in their systems? We can ask that question. Each country has its own rules, regulations, practices, and values. We have ours, others have theirs. And I think to begin with, we need to respect the fact that our judiciary goes back a long way to the late 1790s. And against that background, to suggest that our judges cannot be trusted, I think is demeaning.
Many things go back a long way in Sri Lanka, like our remarkable history goes back over 2,500 years. But when it comes to the current situation, it appears that sometimes from the person from outside looking in can see that not all is exactly well within our judicial process, within our system. Okay, we have a huge backlog of cases each year. It's almost static. The level of the backlogs number is always static. But that's on the numbers. But we've also had, and even now, currently, we have rather well publicized cases of judges being compromised and so on. And doesn't that indicate to you separately that the standards have slipped?
Simply because a single judge or a few judges have slipped, it doesn't mean that the entire judiciary has slipped.
The system hasn't slipped.
I have faith in our system, and I think our system is a good system. We produce great judges in the past, some of whom have achieved preeminence internationally. Veera Mantri, for example. He was the deputy president of the International Court of Justice. He was a product of our bench. And then there were other judges. So as I said, our judges are highly regarded in Fiji and in many other countries in Africa, in the Caribbean. So I think it is wrong to suggest that the entire judicial system has collapsed or has slipped down from where it was. I think it's insulting, in fact.
Another matter in this whole 30/1 is the matter of the okay, there are many points I want to ask you, but one of them is that the military to give up land which they sort of occupied during the operational period, if you like, and now that the terrorists have been hunted down and finished off with. The claim is that the military ought to give up the land, but they're not.
I think that's wrong to suggest that, because over 90% of the land acquired for military purposes, strategic purposes, has been returned.
Right.
There are some bits and pieces still with them. Like in any other country, the military is located in areas which the military considers to be of strategic importance.
Yeah.
And I don't think it is for an external entity to suggest to Sri Lanka that the military should be located in a particular place and not in another place. And then, having said that, in many countries, we have camps around their countries. Nobody's ever suggested that those camps be relocated, certainly not external entities. And some of these countries have bases scattered around the world. Have we suggested that those bases be removed from there?
The Philippines has just done that.
Philippines has done it because it wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And there's constant problems in Okinawa about the base there.
Yeah.
But we have not got involved in that argument or debate. It's those countries to deal with it. And if we wish to shift our bases, our camps, to some other location, that's our business. And that is for the military to determine that, not for an external entity.
As far as you know, there has been various parcels of land that has been released back to their rightful owners. Probably the process of doing it and handing it back has taken a long time, because obviously the hostilities ended in 2009 and we're kind of nearly 11 years later. So how does one address that issue about the land?
I think we need to return what we can.
Yeah.
But if it cannot be returned, we need to compensate the original owners. I think the government is committed to that process. The previous government also had a similar approach to this issue. But the problem with what you just mentioned is that we had a military of over 200,000 men, and their camps were well provided and strongly constructed. It's not easy, financially and otherwise, to move that number of personnel from location to another. So it will take time, but I think it has been done quite efficiently up to now. I think the military has issued statistics which suggest that over 90% of the land, maybe even more, has been returned.
And how possible is it to actually come to conclusion that, look, this piece of land, no way, the military is not giving this up, but in that case they need to be paid some compensation. How possible is to sort that out? Because I mean, after nearly 11 years, it would be fair to say that some people have given up hope.
Yeah, if they have given up hope, then there's no use making a claim for the land, is it? If they come forward with a claim, then either the land is returned because it is feasible, or the original claimants, if they can establish their claim legally, should be compensated. And I believe the government is committed to that approach.
But how far does this commitment go, Dr. Palitha? You know, is it just... I was listening to an interview given by a law lecturer from the University of Jaffna, and he was bemoaning this interview was given during the currency of the Sirisena Wickremesinghe government, and this lecturer was bemoaning that government, that administration had only paid lip service and nothing really in form of action for the people of the area who've been affected by the war and so on and so forth. So sometimes I'm wondering, how deep is this commitment?
As I understand it, the current government will address this issue because it doesn't want this to hang around its neck forever and ever. And it certainly should not be an issue that continues to irk a part of our community and divide the nation in the process. I believe that the commitment is there to address this issue and address it once and for all.
And what about the matter of the disappeared, the disappearees?
Now, this is an issue over which I have huge problems.
Right.
We are told that there are something like 23,000, 25,000 disappearees. The question is, are these disappearees all from the conflict with the terrorist LTTE, or are they also from the time of the JVP insurrection? Have we divided the lot into two, or have we lumped all the disappearees into one lump?
Are there economic refugees as well in the disappearees?
That was the next point I was going to get to. Amongst the disappearees, there were people who left the country without a trace, like those who got into boats, went to Australia.
Yes, because they didn't all sort of go through the Bandaranaike International Airport.
So we don't have a record.
Yes. Why is it? Why is it that foreign governments like the US, like the European Community, like Britain, Australia, New Zealand, why aren't they giving us a list of the people who've sought settlement over there?
The excuse is that under their laws, they cannot release this list. But we know that hundreds went in the direction of Australia. There was even one boatload went to Canada. When I was the Foreign Secretary, I can distinctly recall that incident. And then most of these are economic refugees, and amongst them, and it is a well-known fact in Australia, were Sinhalese who sought greener pastures in Australia.
So they passed themselves off as Tamils?
As Tamils.
Tamil refugees from the conflict area? Not Tamil people from Bambalapitiya or Welawat
or Nigambo or Gaul.
Yeah.
So those who went to Australia are a mix of ethnicities. They paid a huge amount to the human traffickers, and they went looking for greener pastures. And this is well known in Australia. And then there was a time when there was a boatload which was apprehended off the coast of Christmas Island, and almost every one of them was repatriated very quickly. Within about a week, they were sent back to Sri Lanka. But at the moment, we do have a very effective arrangement with Australia, where the Sri Lankan Navy and the Australian authorities collaborate in order to prevent people leaving Sri Lanka, in the direction of Australia.
I think the Australians are having quite a bit of success on that.
In fact, it is a program that they are very pleased with, because they are working with our authorities, especially with our Navy, and the number of people leaving Sri Lanka now in the direction of Australia has been reduced to a minimum, a very small number. And another question that arises in my mind is, if these were refugees fleeing persecution, there are so many other countries on the way that they can seek refuge in. Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia,
but they
even
don't
India.
offer as
all go to Australia.
Economic prospects as Australia.
Exactly. So they're not refugees fleeing persecution.
I get your point. What you're saying is if they were...
They're looking for greener pastures.
Right. So they... Okay. Now then, one of the other issues, of course, and because this is co-sponsored 30/1, is the matter of the missing persons. Do you know, what about that? It's obviously the 40,000.
I think this question has been asked over and over again. If 40,000 went missing, do we have the names of even a fraction of these 40,000? Do we have addresses for them? Do we have relatives claiming them? Or do we just have a figure? As Goebbels said once, if you repeat a lie 3 times, it becomes a fact. So this, I believe, is what has happened with the 40,000. I was the Foreign Secretary at the time of the end of the conflict, and we distinctly remember the ICRC reporting that it had evacuated 7,000 plus injured persons from Mulatiw, from the coast of Mulatiw. If 7,000 were injured at the time, going by military law, the number of killed would have been 1/3. And that would have brought the figure of those who died.
So for 1,000 is the figure that's killed, then what you're saying is you should have 3,000 casualties, injured.
Yeah.
But the figures don't support that.
No, and then also at the time, the UN leaked a document in Colombo which said that 7,000 plus were killed. And very quickly, Sir John Holmes, the Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, disowned even that figure because he said that those figures had not been verified on the ground. But over the months, over the years, a figure of 40,000 has been mentioned.
Received wisdom now.
And everyone refers to this figure, including the Secretary General's panel of experts, which...
Now, this is, very quickly, we've got about 5 minutes more. Very quickly, this report in which they're talking about 40,000 is actually not a UN report. Am I right in saying that this was commissioned by the Secretary General's private office?
To advise the Secretary General.
To advise the Secretary General.
It was never commissioned by the General Assembly, nor by the Security Council, or any other body authorized to commission such a report. And it was a private report provided to the Secretary General, which then was leaked to the media.
Who do you think paid for it? Does that matter?
The Secretary General's office paid for it.
Okay.
And we know who headed that commission. It was Darusman, an Indonesian former Attorney General. But he also made sure in the process that he would get future commissions as well to do this type of report. I believe he's the one who went to Myanmar to investigate into the Rohingya situation.
So it looks like there's no difference in what was Secretary General then, Ban Ki-moon? So when he commissions this, and if his office paid for it, there's hardly any difference in what Governor Mahendran did to the central bank in Sri Lanka when he acted solo. That's what I'm trying to point out. The monetary board was there, and he didn't go to the monetary board to change the system. I'm sorry to bring the bond in onto this thing, but I can see the point I'm making here is this abuse of power, or the misuse or the departure from a process where the meaning can be construed quite differently. In the case of Ban Ki-moon, when he commissions this report, and it's for to advise him, it's now happened that this whole blessed thing has turned out to be a UN report, when it's not.
It is absolutely not a UN report, and it cannot be referred to as a UN report. And the Secretary General did what he did because he came under enormous pressure from certain Western countries like the UK, US, Canada, etc. And then in order to keep them quiet and satisfy them, he said, I'm going to have a report commission for my own benefit. He also, so the Secretary General had a high degree of sympathy for Sri Lanka, and he did not want to go out of his way to embarrass Sri Lanka. But the embarrassment occurred when his own Assistant Secretary General for Human Rights leaked it first to the media and then to the High Commission for Human Rights, Council for Human Rights in Geneva. And there it found its way into the High Commissioner's report. Still, it is not a UN report, and although the press continues to refer, the Western media continues to refer to it as a UN report, it is absolutely not a UN report.
With all due fairness to whoever these various people and agencies are who look after Sri Lanka's reputational image, if you like, they're not doing a pretty good job at it because they need to point out to the foreign media very swiftly and constantly that this is not a UN report.
This is a point I have made over and over again. We need to have a strong unit that can deal with the international media in their own terms. At the moment, we perhaps deal effectively with our domestic media in Sinhala and in Tamil, but the international media, which CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, ABC, you name it, does not get the type of information that we would like them to have. Instead, they rely on their own paid agents who prefer to highlight what sells. And what sells is not necessarily what is in our interest. And half the time, they will happily purvey something that is only marginally related to the truth. For example, the abduction of this lady from the alleged abduction.
Yes, alleged.
I mean, the story was fictitious, but it has now gained credence around the world as a fact.
But I would have liked to have seen the Swiss be much more eloquent and clear in their so-called apology.
They didn't apologize, for one thing.
Exactly.
They actually wanted us to be follow the international recognized rules and procedures, as if we had not. But this message was never conveyed to the Swiss adequately or to the international media.
And the Swiss are hardly a superpower.
But they assume that they are.
But so therefore, this latest thing is going to be a this latest business in Geneva in March is going to be rather contentious or rather very interesting, whichever way you want to look at it.
I think we are up against a difficult challenge, and we need to be well prepared for it. We also need to address this in a way that the issue will not continue to haunt us into the future.
Dr. Palitha Kohona, thank you very much for your time with us, for explaining these matters, and I do hope that you will, even in your retirement, continue to plug the cause for our country, the Democratic Republic of Sri Lanka.
Thank you,
Thank you, Dr. Kohona. And that's the way it was on Newsline. Take care, have a wonderful day ahead of you, and of course, God bless.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.